women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
You work hard for what you want in life. We want our children and all children in this nation.
We want our children in this nation.
The only limit to the height of your achievements is the reach of your dreams and your willingness to work hard for them.
Those in power aren't worried about elections or petitions. What they do fear is that one day their victims will realize the truth, will stop believing in the divine right of politicians, will stop calling liars and crooks lawmakers, will stop calling the tyrants, mercenaries, law enforcers, will stop believing that anyone has the right to rule them, will stop imagining authority where there is none, will realize that they own themselves, and will stop bowing to the parasitical, anti-human beast called government. If you own your time and effort, and the fruits of your labor, then stop asking nicely to be allowed to keep it. If you own yourself, then stop asking nicely for legislative permission to run your own life. If you actually believe in unalienable rights, in individual liberty, in freedom, then stop asking nicely for the sociopathic parasites to let you be free. For humanity to be free, people need to stop thinking, talking, and acting like slaves. Stop bowing to megalomaniacs, stop paying tribute to sociopaths, stop obeying political parasites. If you truly understand that you own yourself, then start acting like it.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there. Like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
The battle for the mind of North America will be fought in the video arena, the Videodrome. The television screen is the retina of the mind's eye. Therefore, the television screen is part of the physical structure of the brain. Therefore, whatever appears on the television screen emerges as raw experience for those who watch it. Therefore, television is reality, and reality is less than television. Your reality is already half video hallucination. If you're not careful, it will become total hallucination. You'll have to learn to live in a very strange new world.
I appeared before the Congressional Committee to tell what I knew of activities which might lead to an attempt to set up a fascist dictatorship.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
President Bush signed a formal agreement that will end the United States as we know it, and he took the step without approval from either the U.S. Congress or the people of the United States.
The secret organizations of the world power elite are no longer secret.
I'm not comfortable with that at all. Who elected these guys to run the planet?
They are the elitists. They feel they should run the world for their own selfish interests.
Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
Bilderberg is making great progress toward a world government, and only an educated, informed public can stop them in their tracks.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
President Bush said that the New World Order was in tune, and that's what they were working for. The UN is part of that government. They're working right now very significantly for a North American Union. That's why there's a lot of people in Washington that don't care too much about our borders. They have a philosophical belief that national sovereignty is not important. It's also the reason I have made very strong suggestion that we need not be in the United Nations for our national security.
There is a chance for the President of the United States to carry out a phrase his father used, and that is a new world order.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
Surveillance drones could soon be watching us all from overhead. The Federal Aviation Administration is expected to announce plans to expand the use of domestic drones in American airspace. Eyes in the sky, similar to the unmanned aircraft that the United States has been using to target terrorists abroad.
So these people who hold themselves out to be patriots are not. They're nothing more than domestic terrorists.
When are these drones likely to be flying, and how many of them might there be above our heads?
Well, there's a growing number already, Shep, but according to the experts, and indeed the FAA itself, there could be as many as 30,000 of these kind of drones, 30,000 flying overhead within the next decade. Now, obviously, law enforcement agencies love these drones.
I am not asking anybody to take a chance on me. I'm asking you to take a chance on your own aspirations.
I'm not just asking you to take a chance on me. I'm also asking you to take a chance on your own aspirations.
We have serious problems to solve, and we need serious people to solve them.
In Australia, we have serious challenges to solve, and we need serious people to solve them.
The world judged the Iraqi regime was a dangerous aggressor. In the interests of world peace and regional security, the community of nations required Iraq to surrender its offensive arsenal.
The world judged the Iraqi regime to be a dangerous aggressor. In the interests of world peace and regional security, the community of nations expelled Iraq from Kuwait, required Iraq to surrender its offensive arsenal.
By taking the tough decisions, tough long-term decisions,
Punch and Judy.
the Punch and Judy politics.
As we stand on the crossroads of history, I know we can make the right choices and meet the challenges that lay before us.
And that as we stand on the crossroads of history, we can make the right choices and meet the challenges that face us.
Why am I the first Kinnick in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university? Why is Gladys the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations?
And I started thinking as I was coming over here, why is it that Joe Biden is the first in his family ever to go to a university? Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
All of us are going to be just fine, no matter what happens.
Whatever happens, we're going to be fine.
But what's at stake is whether America is going to be fine.
I just hope that we'll be able to say the same thing about the American people.
He's only interested in two things: making Australians afraid of it and telling them who's to blame for it.
He is interested in two things, and two things only: making you afraid of it and telling you who's to blame for it.
You work hard for what you want in life. We want our children and all children in this nation.
We want our children in this nation.
The only limit to the height of your achievements is the reach of your dreams and your willingness to work hard for them.
If you're on the edge of waking up and you're not sure about any of this stuff, this should help you wake up to see how everything is scripted. They're all reading off the same script. It's all a show. The television is a show, the news, the things that you think are real are fake. And actually the things they show you in the movies are real, because they show you by using predictive programming what is to come and what is to happen, just like all these outbreak movies that we've seen year after year after year. These clips here should help wake you up. Now, if you're somebody who is seeing this because someone shared it with you, understand this. All of these people who work for these news networks all read off the same exact script. This is all developed by the same people who control and own the media. This is basic operation, no different than a military operation. It's a psychological operation on you. They're always, always, always hurting us like cattle. The narrative's always the same. And there's an end game to all of this stuff, keeping us controlled, keeping us misinformed about what's really going on, and keeping us in the dark about the things that go on in this world that you have no idea about, but if you found out, you would uprise. And that's why they keep it quiet. Take a look at all of these news anchors, all of these commercials, all of the same narrative, and how they just continue to use it over and over through repetition, which is the basic form of mind control. That's what you learn in school. There's a reason you go through so many different years of schooling and learn the same exact crap year after year after year. It's because that's how they pound it into your head. So by the time you're 20, this stuff is beaten so hard into you, it's hard to believe that all the stuff you learned is lies. And that's why they call us conspiracy nuts, because they think that, oh, these people are just some wacky, crazy people. No, we actually figured out that this entire thing is a scam. And it's just a basic form of mind control from military operations that they've used, like MK Ultra. They have been testing the human brain for over 100 years now, just like we watch on the History Channel or the Discovery Channel, watching animals and how they act in their natural habitat. That's what they've done with us. And they realize that there's a way to hurt us, to keep us dumbed down, to fluoride us, and to just keep giving us these scripts and these narratives that we all follow and think are real when they're not. It's nothing but a giant script, all to lead to a new world order, a one world order, which is the message of the Antichrist. Take a look for yourself.
You filled up your gas tank lately, then you don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you gas prices are back on the rise.
You don't need us to tell you that gas prices are back on the rise.
Who are you really shopping for this holiday season? It's okay, you can admit it, if you've bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
Well, it's okay, you can admit it if you have bought an item or 2 or maybe 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or maybe 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
And it's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or maybe 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought maybe an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it.
If you've bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 say for yourself.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about the trouble and trying to be responsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 In consumer news, economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Economic factors may take some spring out of the Easter Bunny step this year.
Mike Myers says, yeah, baby.
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 And welcome back to the show. I scream, you scream. You know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream. You know the rest.
I scream, you scream, well, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, well, you know the rest.
Got it. I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream. You know the rest.
I scream, you scream, well, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream. You know the rest.
I scream, you scream, and you know the rest.
I scream, you scream.
You know the rest. I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, and everybody knows the rest.
I scream, you scream. Oh, you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, and you know the rest.
I scream, you scream, you know the rest.
When we first opened our doors.
Since 1926.
Since 1978.
For 60 years.
For 75 years.
For over 80 years.
In 90 years. For over 100 years.
Nationwide has been on your side.
Restaurants have always been there for you.
Nissan has been with you through thick and thin.
We will do what we've always done.
take care of people.
We're people.
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 People. People and family.
Family.
Family. Family.
Family. Family.
Family.
Family.
Family. Families. Families. Families.
Even now. Especially now.
Especially now. Right now.
Now more than ever.
More than ever.
Today, more than ever.
Today, more than ever.
In times like this.
At times like these. During these difficult times.
In these troubled times.
Challenging times.
Trying times.
In these times of uncertainty.
During this time of great uncertainty.
During these uncertain times.
During these uncertain times.
In uncertain times.
In uncertain times. Uncertain times.
Unprecedented times.
Unprecedented times.
Unprecedented times.
This unprecedented moment in our history.
It's time of social distancing.
While things have slowed down. As we turn more inside. While the doors may be closed.
While the distance between us has gotten bigger.
The more we stay apart,
we still find ways to stay close, even when we're apart.
even if we can't stand closer than 6 feet.
We can all stay connected to work, school, and most importantly, to each other.
There's still ways to touch each other.
All without leaving the comfort and safety of your home.
Without leaving the safety of your home.
From home.
Home. Your home.
At home. Home.
Home.
Home. Home. Home. Home.
Home.
Home. That's the key.
Buick and GMC are here to help. Con Edison is here to help.
Here to help.
Our teams are here.
We are here.
We're here.
We're here.
Here for you.
Here for you.
We're here for you.
We're here for you.
We are here for you.
We're here for you.
We are here for you. We'll be here for you.
Runnings is here for you.
We're still here for you.
We're with you. We're part of your community.
So you can trust us.
You can count on us.
And we'll get through this. Together.
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 Together. Together. And together.
Together.
Together. Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
Together.
MasterCard.
The flag of Washington's District of Columbia has 3 red stars, one for each city-state in the 3-city empire. This corporate empire of 3 city-states controls the world economically through London's inner city, militarily through the District of Columbia, and spiritually through the Vatican. The Constitution for the District of Columbia operates under a tyrannical Roman law known as Lex Fori, which bears no resemblance to the U.S. Constitution. When Congress passed the Act of 1871, it created a separate corporate government for the District of Columbia. This treasonous act allowed the District of Columbia to operate as a corporation outside the original Constitution of the United States and outside of the best interests of American citizens. A sobering study of the signed treaties and charters between Britain and the United States exposes a shocking truth. The United States has always been, and still is, a British Crown colony. King James I was famous not for just changing the Bible into the King James Version, but for signing the First Charter of Virginia in 1606. That charter granted America's British forefathers a license to settle and colonize America. The charter also guaranteed that future kings and queens of England would have sovereign authority over all the citizens and colonized land in America stolen from the Indians. After America declared its independence from Great Britain, the Treaty of 1783 was signed. That treaty specifically identifies the King of England as the Prince of the United States and contradicts the belief that America won the War of Independence. Although King George III of England gave up most of his claims over his American colonies, he kept his right to continue receiving payment for his business venture of colonizing America. If America had really won the War of Independence, they would never have agreed to pay debts and reparations to the King of England. When Congress passed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, The U.S. president was made subservient to the King of England. The 13th Amendment is called the Title of Nobility Amendment and forbids U.S. presidents and their officials from using royal titles like king or prince or baron. For some mysterious reason, the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in 1810, no longer appears on current copies of the Constitution. America's blood-soaked War of Independence against the British bankrupted America and turned its citizens into permanent debt slaves of the king. In the War of 1812, the British torched and burned to the ground the White House and all U.S. government buildings and destroyed ratification records of the U.S. Constitution. 1 century later, a corrupt U.S. Congress committed the biggest theft in world history. They passed Paul Warburg's Federal Reserve Act in 1913, handing over America's gold and silver reserves and total control of America's economy to the Rothschild banksters. Most Americans still believe that the Fed, or Federal Reserve, is the government. It is not. The Fed is a privately owned banking system whose majority Class A shareholders are the Rothschilds, Warburgs, Kuhn and Loeb, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Israel Seif, and the Lehman Brothers. This private banking cartel is the Fed and is never audited and never pays taxes. They print and design America's money, which displays their symbols of an Egyptian pyramid, a Masonic all-seeing eye, and the words, "In God we trust." Who exactly is the God they trust? They also collect American taxpayers' money through the IRS. Then they loan it back again with interest to pay for roads, bridges, and other public works. Most U.S. citizens believe that the United States is a country and that the president is the most powerful man on earth. The United States is not a country. It is a corporation, and the president is president of the corporation of the United States. He and his elected officials work for the corporation, not for the American people. Since the United States is a corporation, who owns the corporation of the United States? Like Canada and Australia, whose leaders are prime ministers of the Queen and whose land is called Crown Land, the United States is just another crown colony. Crown colonies are controlled by the empire of 3 city-states. At the center of each city-state is a towering, phallic-shaped stone monument called an obelisk that points skyward. In D.C. city-state, the obelisk, known as the Washington Monument, was dedicated to Freemason George Washington by the Freemason Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia. The secretive Brotherhood of Freemasons laid the Washington obelisk's cornerstone in 1848 and contributed 22 Masonic memorial stones. 250 Masonic lodges financed the Washington Monument obelisk, including the Knights Templar Masonic Order. At the heart of London city-state is a 187-ton, 69-foot-tall Egyptian obelisk called Cleopatra's Needle. It was transported from Egypt and erected on the banks of the River Thames. In Vatican City, another Egyptian obelisk towers high above St. Peter's Square. What exactly is an obelisk? Obelisks are phallic-shaped monuments honoring the pagan sun god of ancient Egypt called Amun-Ra. The spirit of this pagan god is said to reside within the obelisk. Obelisks symbolize the phallus and fertility. At the base of the obelisk is a sunwheel circle symbolizing the vagina. Together, they depict male and female sexual union. Worshippers of Amun believe Amun is the supreme god and creator of all things, and can transform himself into other gods, like Osiris, the god of the underworld, or Seth, the god of evil and chaos. Since vowels were interchangeable in the biblical Hebrew language, Amun can be spelled A-M-E-N, A-M-O-N, O-M-O-N, or A-M-U-N. Today, Amun is one of the most popularly used words in the entire world. It is used in all languages by Christians, Muslims, Hindus, and Jews at the end of prayer. Without realizing it, people all over the world are praising Amun. The Old Testament of the Bible is the holy book of both Christians and Jews. Amun is repeated over and over again throughout the Bible and is hidden within the word Testament. The word Amen literally means the hidden one. Many are fooled into believing that Amen means so be it, or truly. But in Kings 1, verse 36 of the Old Testament, Amen is identified as the Lord God of my Lord. Why in the world would the Vatican, a fortress of Puritan Christian values, erect a monument symbolizing the pagan god Amen and sexual intercourse right in its own front yard?
August 2nd, 1990. Saddam Hussein's forces crashed through the defenses of oil-rich Kuwait. In fear of an Iraqi invasion into Saudi Arabia, the United States and her coalition allies poured into the Arabian Peninsula to form a deterrent that would be known as Desert Shield. The result was a series of diplomatic talks, negotiations and counter-negotiations that rapidly declined into a no-hope situation. On August the 17th, 1991, Desert Shield became Desert Storm. The conflict was witnessed by millions through the eye of CNN and the BBC, showing propaganda of the systematic eradication of Saddam's forces by a coalition far superior in technological, political, and economic power. However, what was little known was that from the outset the war was engineered, controlled, and manipulated by an elite group. A group which had created the illusion of a man with power, at the head of a million-strong army, on the verge of going nuclear. A man who had gained control over 1/5 of the world's oil overnight. However, in reality, he was merely a pawn, in amongst many pawns, just a puppet in a grand master plan, with the Gulf War as a well-orchestrated stepping stone. The orchestrators of the war were by no means strangers to controlling major world events. In fact, they have done so for centuries. From the shadows, they have engineered every major war, revolution, and recession. They control everything you read, everything you hear, and everything you see. They have managed to indoctrinate an entire populace to their way of thinking, and have infiltrated key positions in places of authority. And it is from the shadows that they have created a new political order, a new economic order, and more sinister, a new religious order. Their ultimate aim is total global domination, and they will stop at nothing to reach their goal. The goal that was outlined in a speech given by former President of the United States, George Bush.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
However, the origins of this global plan were not created in the offices of the White House. In reality, their roots lay in another war. This time, the year is 1095, and the place, Clermont, France. For some, Scotland's hope of independence had died with the death of William Wallace. However, to the King of Scotland, Robert the Bruce, the arrival of the Templars gave him a new secret weapon. Their experience, gained over 200 years of fighting the mighty armies of Islam, had made them expert in combat and warfare, and more than a match for any army brought before them. In 1314, the Templars, allied with Robert the Bruce and his army, took to the fields of Bannockburn in the long-awaited showdown with the English. Robert the Bruce's foresight paid off. The 25,000-strong English army suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of only 6,500 men. The dream of an independent Scotland had finally been achieved. The Templars had brought themselves back from the brink of destruction, and never again would they allow themselves to be destroyed. This time, they would control the country by controlling its kings, and in order to preserve their secret order, the Templars would have to die, or more precisely, the name would have to die. The Templars, who had escaped Europe, were finally laid to rest in Rosslyn Chapel, Scotland, which stands to this day as sign of their presence in Britain. Their descendants became the true power of Scotland. In 1603, the death of Queen Elizabeth I left England without an heir to the throne. By virtue of descent, King James V of Scotland became King of England. In doing so, Scotland and England joined to form a new kingdom, and the power that the Templars held over Scotland spread to give them a firm grip on the whole of Great Britain. For over 100 years, the Templars concealed their activities, fading into the background until they were little known and little remembered. However, they did not cease to keep a firm grip on Britain. All the time they were planning, regrouping, and infiltrating positions of power in all corners of the kingdom. In 1717, the Templars made their reappearance in Europe. They had grown in both number and strength, and were now ready to coin a new identity, free from their reputation of the past, and given credibility by none other than the monarchy and aristocracy of England. And the name they chose for themselves was a name that would be known by many, but understood by a few. This new name, the Freemason. The new identity and the grandeur of its members afforded the Masons with respect and dignity. The first royal member of the Freemasons was Frederick, Prince of Wales. The latest members include Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, and consort to the current Queen of England, Elizabeth II, who herself is a grand patron to the Masons. However, behind closed doors, the Freemasons were free to indulge in the secret rites and rituals handed down to them by their ancestors, and these became the basis of their levels of membership, called degrees. The Freemasons were not content with power in Britain alone. Their ambitions were far greater. In the years to come, the world would witness Europe and America being plagued by wars and revolutions, each more devastating than the other. However, these would not be as commonly believed, the spontaneous effects of a downtrodden people, but in fact schemes created by the exclusive few driven by hunger for absolute power. All this would take place from the very country from which they had fled centuries earlier, and would become the base for their global domination.
To order, brethren, to receive the most worshipful, the Grand Master.
Self-evident, Brother Franklin, all men are created equals.
Indeed, Brother Washington, all Freemasons meet as equals, and we have an opportunity to create a nation
in the very essence of Masonic morality. It would be wonderfully symbolic, don't you think?
You'll be wanting to put the all-seeing eye on our banknotes next.
You think I'm taking it a bit far?
Please don't ask me questions like that, Brother Franklin. You know I cannot tell a lie.
Oh, come on, Brother Washington. Everybody lies occasionally, surely. Especially politicians.
Not me. Not even so much as an alternative fact.
We must all be aware of fake news.
But people must be free to think what they like as well. We can have no thought police in our new society. The foundation stone of our new nation built on all those principles that we hold dear.
The plans for our new capital city already have a very Masonic feel to them, yeah.
Candidate for initiation into the order, I'm giving him a little introduction into some of our mysteries. These two gentlemen are founding an entire nation built on our principles.
We have great promises for our new nation. You know, I wonder if other presidents after me will also be Freemasons.
Many will be. And Freemasonry will become embedded in the American culture. And the eye will appear on the banknotes.
Oh, God.
These principles will be honored with a gift from your French brethren. A gift that will be a welcoming beacon to the poor and oppressed.
This is the statue we are giving you.
It's a bit small, isn't it?
Oh, this is a maquette. The real thing is bigger. Much, much bigger.
America will produce a great many great Americans from many different walks of life and many different fields, and many will be Masons. Sportsmen, actors, writers, soldiers, filmmakers, businessmen, inventors, astronauts.
What on earth is an astronaut?
No, they're not.
I don't follow.
Well, they're not on Earth, they're in space. In fact, Brother Buzz Aldrin was the second man to walk upon the surface of the moon.
That's the best thing I've heard this evening.
What, that a Mason walked on the moon?
Man on the moon. Amazing. But don't forget the musicians. Do not forget the musicians.
Authoritarian and totalitarian regimes continue to suppress Freemasonry, afraid of its strong heritage of liberty and equality.
It symbolizes the inevitability of your end.
The British Army had travelling lodges that moved with regiments. Freemasons have served their countries and communities with distinction.
Freemasons met across the Union and Confederate divide to celebrate their common rituals.
And today, Freemasonry remains an active part of military life in many countries.
Freemasonry has burned as a blazing fire through the last 3 centuries. The driving force behind the Royal Society was initiated into Freemasonry.
Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, father of Queen Victoria, and Prince Augustus, Duke of Sussex. The two princes brought their feuding Grand Lodges together and reconciled to be the United Grand Lodge of England.
Kings George IV, William IV, Edward VII, Edward VIII, and George VI were all Freemasons, as were 18 dukes and princes, including the Duke of Edinburgh.
This year, His Royal Highness Prince Edward, the Duke of Kent, celebrates his 50th year as Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England.
His Royal Highness was proposed into Freemasonry by the then Grand Master, the Earl of Scarborough.
He was initiated into Royal Alpha Lodge number 16, an advocate for the craft all over the world, continuing 3 centuries of distinguished royal tradition at the very heart of English Freemasonry.
To order, brethren, to receive the most worshipful, the Grand Master.
As permanent master of these 3 lodges,
I now call on my deputy masters.
Most worshipful Grand Master.
Most worshipful Grand Master.
Most worshipful Grand Master.
Most worshipful Grand Master, I humbly ask you to complete the initiation of this worthy candidate for Freemasonry.
Adorn our ceremonies and forever remind us of our incomparable heritage, the birth of organized Freemasonry,
stressing the deep and sincere loyalty and affection felt by the Brethren of the United Grand Lodge of England for their Grand Master.
I had the pleasure of meeting 136 Grand Masters visiting from overseas at Freemasons Hall yesterday. Today, though, we are a meeting of more than 4,000, gathered from all around the world, from our own constitution and beyond. When the global Masonic family comes together to celebrate our past and to renew our own pride and confidence in and enthusiasm for Freemasonry.
I hereby read the text of a letter sent today to Buckingham Palace. May it please your Majesty, we, the representatives of over 200,000 Freemasons under the United Grand Lodge of England, most respectfully express our continuing loyalty to your Majesty's throne and person in this, the 66th year of your long and distinguished reign, of His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, as our much-loved and greatly respected Grand Master. We humbly thank God for preserving our order and fervently pray His blessings on your Majesty, so that our loyal devotion to your Majesty may long continue. Given at the Royal Albert Hall this 31st day of October, Anno Domini 2017. Her Majesty has been pleased to reply in the following terms. The Queen has asked me to thank you for your kind letter of loyal greetings on behalf of the representatives of the Freemasons under the United Grand Lodge of England, which are being celebrated on the 31st of October at the Royal Albert Hall. Her Majesty appreciated your thoughtfulness in writing as you did.
We leave the Royal Albert Hall even more proud of our ancient institution.
Worldwide, Freemasonry remains as important and relevant as ever. A global society of perhaps 6 million people.
As the globe embraced Freemasonry, enlightenment came.
I may not agree with what you say, but I shall defend to the death your right to say it.
None is more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free.
Coat of arms of Donald Trump. What does it actually represent?
Well, this is rather interesting, actually. This is arcane Scottish heraldic law providing evidence of Donald Trump's deep Anglophilia, I would say, and also touches upon the royal prerogative. There we have the double-headed eagle representing his Scottish Germanic heritage. The Masonic Chip program uses modern police-approved techniques to create a child identification kit.
And we take fingerprints. We also provide them with a swab for getting a DNA swab. And we also provide them with imprint where they can get an imprint of the child's teeth. So not only does it provide DNA as well as a swab, but it is also a source if you were using tracking dogs to provide a scent for the child.
You may be surprised to see who we found using tricks to cover up their license plates.
Apparently, they're law enforcement.
You know, in Hollywood and in the industry and the stuff we do, there's a lot of like insider secrets to keeping your career going, and a lot of insider secrets to making things tick.
Deep in the forest of Belgium, just outside the little village of Munau, lies a dark castle, a place so forbidden, many locals refuse to even speak of it. Shrouded in secrecy and heavily guarded, it is rumored to be home to unspeakable horrors. Officially, its name is Chateau Amaroy, aka the Mothers of Darkness Castle. It has been accused of being the epicenter of the Illuminati underworld, hosting some of the elite's darkest rituals, high-level monarch programming. Join me as we unlock the secrets of Mothers of Darkness Castle and discover why it has earned the nickname the most evil place on Earth.
One investigator said it was like going back to the Middle Ages.
One of the Illuminati's top ritual castles.
And of 1,000 points of light.
The elite love their secluded castles and stately homes, far from the prying eyes of the public, where they can engage in perverse and strange practices for the worship of their ancient gods. In Belgium lies just such a castle, the menacing Chateau Amaroy. It has been named by researchers as one of the main ritual centers of the Illuminati, but researching it proves difficult. Little information about this castle is available, and the owners appear to be doing everything they can to keep it that way. Almost no pictures of the interior exist online. Even the BBC and National Geographic have allegedly been denied access. The castle's wooded perimeter is heavily guarded, with cameras, electric fences, tripwires, and more. The castle was originally built for Prince Philip of the notorious Saxe-Coburg-Gotha royal bloodline, the same family as the British royals, who are descended from Vlad the Impaler, the original Dracula. Today, it is owned by an elite family of Belgian industrialists called the Solvays. The Solvays are one of the wealthiest families in Belgium. They own large pharmaceutical and chemical companies responsible for the notorious drug Prozac and the industrial-scale production of fluoride and fluoride products that get added to the water we drink. Although officially named Chateau Amaroy, the castle is better known as the Mothers of Darkness Castle, due to it being the alleged meeting place of a special rank of Illuminati witches known as Mothers of Darkness. Mothers of Darkness are high-adept witches who come from old satanic families. The macabre rituals they perform would make your blood run cold. The candidates for the Mothers of Darkness are subjected to ritual abuse from childhood, resulting in a dissociative mind that is easy to program. Most high-level Illuminati witches have some dissociated identities known as multiple personalities. Mothers of Darkness are programmed and initiated within the mysterious Chateau Amaroy.
Mothers of Darkness seem to be like deep satanic priestesses that have also then raised daughters and or granddaughters and have been over many of the women involved. So they are deeply well known in the underground of satanic ritual abuse and multiple personality disorder.
But these elite witches aren't the only reason the castle maintains such strict privacy. The site is also said to be home to the Belgian elite's satanic Eyes Wide Shut parties, which involve children and are usually filmed for blackmail. This was all revealed during the infamous Dutroux scandal that nearly caused a revolution in Belgium and saw the resignation of top officials. It all began in the early 90s when children started going missing in alarming numbers. It took Belgian authorities 4 years to arrest a man named Marc Dutroux, despite numerous credible tip-offs that he was kidnapping and holding girls prisoner, including one from his own mother. Dutroux was procuring these children for the Belgian political elite and aristocracy to use as party favors for their blackmail operations. After the scandal broke, one Belgian senator noted that such parties were part of a system which operates to this day and is used to blackmail highly placed people. The same system of blackmail operates all over the Western world and is one of the Illuminati's primary means of control. The Dutroux witness files are replete with stories of such parties taking place in castles, and one specifically named the Chateau Amaroi.
And so I exposed this ritual castle in southern Belgium. And at first, this was in 1991, and a number of years transpired, and it was like I was a voice in the wilderness and nobody had heard. But eventually it did get heard. And what happened is in Belgium, the Belgian government was toppled. They had big protests in Brussels a couple times where there were over 500,000 Belgians protesting their government. And the reason why is because there was a big scandal that broke loose where people had discovered that there were satanic covens in their government, the government of Belgium. And this got connected and people then were able to connect what was going on and some of the people back to this castle that I had exposed.
Because Belgium is the global center of the European Union and NATO, many of the so-called elite from around the world attend these parties. A Belgian newspaper reported that a former commissioner of the European Union was among a group of judges, lawyers, and policemen who attended orgies organized by one of Dutroux's assistants.
Sorry, this comes from the Sunday Times back in 1996, but here goes. Quote, Brussels satanic sects involved in bizarre rites, including human sacrifice, are being linked by Belgian police with this summer's string of grisly pedophile murders in which at least 4 children died. 5 witnesses came forward last week and described how black masses were held and which children were killed in front of audiences were said to have included prominent members of Belgian society.
Many of these witnesses described hunting parties where children were allowed to run in the forest and then hunted down like animals. These adrenaline-pumping events are said to be a favorite of the psychopathic elite. Abuse survivors Kathy O'Brien, Fiona Barnett, and Paul Benassi all have described similar hunting parties, known to the elite as the most dangerous game.
It was early evening when they played Most Dangerous Game.
I was stripped of my clothing. I was allowed to wear tennis shoes and told that I could have a head start and begin running before I would be hunted down. My exposure to it resulted in my believing I had no place to run and no place to hide. It seemed there were no limits to what could happen in my existence at that time.
Was the most extreme, one of the most extreme situations I think I ever survived.
One investigator remarked that it was like something out of the Middle Ages. Dutroux was heavily connected to the satanic underworld. One cult we know he provided children for is called Abraxas. Abraxas is an openly satanic group which names itself after a pot-bellied demon called Abraxas. In 1996, police discovered a note to Dutroux from a mysterious person calling themselves Anubis. The note informed Dutroux that a special ceremony was coming up and instructed him to provide quote-unquote presents for the high priestess of the Abraxas order, and even gave specific details as to the age and sex the presents should be. No doubt some of these children Dutroux kidnapped were delivered to the Mothers of Darkness Castle, where researchers have reported that child sacrifices take place nearly every day.
And I gave the location. Eyewitnesses who had been in rituals in the castle where children were sacrificed, and the blood of these children is drained, and quill pens are filled up, and the blood is used to write an account of what the Illuminati have done that day and bring about the plan.
Ultimately, Dutroux was jailed, but his high-profile clients got off scot-free. A curtain of secrecy descended over the entire case, and the investigation was stopped from going any further before the rest of the ring could be exposed.
Dutroux, qui était le prédateur isolé, entre guillemets, d'accord, qui faisait bouc émissaire pour protéger tout l'immense réseau belge qui implique en premier lieu les deux rois belges qui se sont succédés. Il faut le savoir.
It is no accident that this den of Satanism is located in Belgium. The small, picturesque nation on the border of France has been named by alternative researchers as an Illuminati capital and headquarters of the New World Order. It is home to the European Union and NATO, making it a central hub for high-level Luciferian rituals. International financiers, politicians, and businessmen come to Belgium for business and make a stopover at the Chateau Amaroi, or one of the region's many other satanic estates, to participate in the sacrifices and blood rituals required of an Illuminatus. Remember the Dutch banker Ronald Bernard, who claimed the top world leaders and financiers are forced to take part in satanic activities, and he himself was asked to attend a child sacrifice.
It was the good life. But then at some point, I was invited, which is why I'm telling you all this, to participate in sacrifices abroad. That was the breaking point. Children.
You were asked to do that?
Yes. And I couldn't do that. The purpose of the whole thing, eventually, in that world, is that they have everybody in their pocket. You need to be susceptible to blackmail. And blackmailing me proved to be very hard if I look back on it.
According to researcher David Icke's book, The Biggest Secret, Belgium, or Balgium, was actually established to be a headquarters for the satanic elite. And it is for this reason that the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, aka the Windsor bloodline, was imposed to rule over it. Belgium is still ruled by a royal family, who are very much above the law. The aristocracy is deeply involved in satanic secret societies. At the '88 Republican National Convention, GOP loyalists cheered as George H.W. Bush took the stage to accept the party's presidential nomination. It was the first time America would hear a strange, mystical phrase that would become synonymous with President Bush: 1,000 points of light.
I've spoken of 1,000 points of light. Enduring dream and 1,000 points of light.
Despite no one knowing what it meant, he went on to say it again at his inaugural address. Once again, few in the audience except for members of the Illuminati knew the significance of that bizarre phrase, or the location to which it secretly referred. Inside Mothers of Darkness Castle is a special room used as the place of ceremony for the highest orders of the satanic hierarchy. Inside the ornate room are balconies and a magnificent dome containing 1,000 lights. This is what Bush was alluding to by 1,000 points of light.
But nobody bothered to question that. And he said that at least 4 to 6 times. I talked to a lady just recently in Baltimore. She came up right after the meeting in Baltimore, and she came up and she said, "Everything that you said tonight, I can verify." She said, "Because I was George Bush's campaign manager." And she proved it. She pulled out the campaign manager badge that she had when she was campaign manager when he was going into for presidential election. And she said, "I was there the night that he made that address. And she says, now I understand what that meant. Because she said, I looked at George and I said, after he stepped off the platform, I said, George, I want to be, I don't know about that New World Order thing. She said, but I want to be a part of that 1,000 points of light. And she said, he grabbed her by the shoulder, looked her sternly in the face and said, I have no control over that.
It is also very telling that President Trump drew special attention to this old phrase at a rally held in Montana in 2018, reminding the audience of the bizarre nature and inexplicable meaning of the term.
All the rhetoric you used to hear, the 1,000 points of light. What the hell was that, by the way? 1,000 points of light. I never quite got that one. I'm trying to say, what the hell is that? Has anyone ever figured that one out?
YouTube has videos of people attempting to go near the Mothers of Darkness castle and discovering elaborate security measures around the perimeter. One man who found the gate open claims his girlfriend went to knock on the door and was never heard from again. He went to the authorities, but the local police said the people at the Chateau Amaroy claimed they never saw his girlfriend and threatened him with trespassing charges. There are even rumors that the castle has tunnels beneath it that are connected to other locations. From Vlad the Impaler to Elizabeth Bathory, who bathed in the blood of her young servant girls, history provides numerous accounts of psychopathic elites whose victims are lured to dark castles, never to be seen again. Today, children continue to go missing, and a girl's body was found on the estate of Queen Elizabeth II. Maybe those tales hold more truth than we dare to admit. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And
our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. The establishment has trillions of dollars at stake in this election. For those who control the levers of power in Washington and for the global special interest, they partner with these people that don't have your good in mind. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government.
Look up in the sky above, see the jet sprayed wide. It mixes with the air we breathe, great problems are inside. The stuff that they are spraying without informed consent, the product of coal burning, sprayed with malintent. There's coal ash in the sky above that Donald Trump should see. It poisons the first family as well as you and me. It's a global operation. No one has said stop. And this, Mr. President, you are the man on top. The press, they all say nothing, as if they do not know. Health is no concern to them, party line is what they told. Those who order coal ash into the air we breathe, integrity is gone missing, what they do is just deceive. Our planet is a special place where life can survive, a complex balance in nature in which God's creatures thrive. Global governance has no right to do us harm. Spraying poison, changing climate, leaders raise alarm. ash sprayed into the air retards the fall of rain, heats the air and traps Earth's heat, so what is there to gain? It causes global warming, that's what it's all about. And blame it on the CO2 that all of us breathe out. New taxes, regulations, and carbon credits too. United Nations enforcers take sovereignty from you. This is the biggest travesty to ever orchestrate. A full assault on planet Earth is what they perpetrate. Our air is unfit to breathe, it's a toxic aerosol dump. But we the people spoke of electing Donald Trump. Serve people, Mr. President, that's what we've been thinking. Stop the spray jets, tell the truth, stand tall just like Lincoln. Stop the spray jets, tell the truth, stand tall just like Lincoln.
First, they came for the writers. But I didn't speak up because I was not a writer. Then they came for the students. But I didn't speak up because I was not a student. Then they came for musicians. But I didn't speak up because I was not a musician. And then they came for the Greens, the Muslims, the trade unionists, Christians, and the Jews, the travelers, the homosexuals, the journalists, the artists, the taggers, the doctors, the philosophers, the economists, the anarchists and the politicians, the nerds, the Europeans, the Americans, the communists, the hackers, illegals, the homeless. And I didn't speak up because I wasn't any of them. Any of them. And then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak up for me.
To whom does your life belong? Who owns you? Most people instinctively answer, I own myself. But most people don't actually believe that. What does it mean to own something? It means that you and you alone have the right to decide what is done with that thing. What is yours you can use, you can trade, you can give away, you can destroy. So what does it mean to say you own yourself? It means that you and you alone have the right to decide what is done with your body and your mind, with your time and your energy. If someone else had the right to decide what is done with your body and your mind, your time and your energy, then he would be your owner and you would be his slave. So, are you anyone's slave? Do you pay taxes? Do you feel obligated to obey whatever the politicians decide to call law? Do you imagine that someone else has the right to control you, to rule you? Do you vote? In every political election, you are asked to decide who you want owning you, but owning yourself is never one of the options offered. The only choice you are given is the choice of which politicians will coerce and control you by way of so-called regulation and legislation, and confiscate what you produce by way of taxation. Whoever wins, you will be extorted and dominated. When you vote, whether you win or not, you are accepting that someone else has the right to rule you. You are conceding the state's authority over you. You are agreeing that you are going to be someone's slave, with the only question being which political master will own you. If you believe that you have an obligation to pay taxes, if you concede that it is up to someone else to decide how much of your earnings they will let you keep, then you are their slave. If you own yourself, you don't need the permission of anyone, any individual, any group, any collective, any country, any legislature, to run your own life, make your own choices, and keep the fruits of your own labor. As long as the politicians see you voting, petitioning, protesting, and campaigning, begging for tax cuts, whining for different legislation, as long as they see you timidly obeying whatever commands they issue, while begging them to change their so-called laws, then they know that they own you in mind and body. Writing or calling your congressman merely tells him that you still think he's important, that you still view him and his fellow parasites as authority, and that you still think it's his choice whether to let you be free or not. As long as you play their games and legitimize their system, obeying their so-called laws and paying their so-called taxes, acting as if they are your rightful lords and masters, the tyrants know they have nothing to fear. The slave master doesn't mind his slaves pitifully begging for mercy, as long as they keep obeying and keep producing wealth for the master to steal. Those in power aren't worried about elections or petitions. What they do fear is that one day their victims will realize the truth, will stop believing in the divine right of politicians, will stop calling liars and crooks lawmakers, will stop calling the tyrants, mercenaries, law enforcers, will stop believing that anyone has the right to rule them, will stop imagining authority where there is none, will realize that they own themselves, and will stop bowing to the parasitical, anti-human beast called government. If you own your time and effort, and the fruits of your labor, then stop asking nicely to be allowed to keep it. If you own yourself, then stop asking nicely for legislative permission to run your own life. If you actually believe in unalienable rights and individual liberty and freedom, then stop asking nicely for the sociopathic parasites to let you be free. For humanity to be free, people need to stop thinking, talking, and acting like slaves. Stop bowing to megalomaniacs. Stop paying tribute to sociopaths. Stop obeying political parasites. If you truly understand that you own yourself, then start acting like it.
case you find these videos useful, please share them with others so we can help them too. Subscribe and hit the bell icon for more videos and updates. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Peace.